My name is Rina Little from Littleworks Indie Media, and today our topic is actually one of Phelan's best topics. It is called Google Ad Settings that will save you, actually, it's time, and because it saves you time, it saves you money. And Phelan is from Seymour Digital Media, and this is his topic. So I'm doing all the introduction, and then I'm going to just ask a few questions in between because I really don't know anything about Google ads. I work with Phelan and Pip on and another contractor on Google Ads. And so, Phelan, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so just double checking that everything's running. Yeah, seems to be running smooth. Awesome. Just before we get too far into it, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it turns
So
out we have no audio.
everybody got my little preamble and
Yeah, yeah. It's just womp
I
womp
don't
womp womp womp.
I don't get a
Yeah,
redo.
yeah. Just kind of jumping off because I know it's a big one, as a lot of people have been moving to Google Ads, and so there's been a lot of changes to it. Oh, oops.
Oh, what
Uh,
happened?
that
You
was me
lost.
by accident. I'm not going to touch my keyboard. And there's been a lot of changes, and so we wanted to cover over, some things, little hidden parts of Google Ads, because it's a pretty complex platform that will be very helpful to you to save you a lot of money and to make sure that you're getting the most out of your budget.
So I just have a quick question. So last
Yeah.
week I was on with Pip doing Google Ads.
Yeah.
If you missed that session, jump back into our videos in Facebook or on YouTube, or depending on where you're watching from. And we were talking about the Google Ads editor. So are these tips that you're going to give us today applicable in both the editor and the online platform, or is it just one or the other?
Yeah, they're going to be in both platforms. They're probably going to be easiest to find in the web platform for the
Okay.
most part. Um, and just kind of as a jumping off one is just even being able to set up an account and not set up a smart campaign, because it's definitely like they definitely have you going down a primrose path of like, oh, tell us a little bit more about your business and what's your goal for your business. Then before you know it, you've like, oh, I've set up a smart campaign. Um,
So do you not like the smart campaigns then? Is that what you're saying?
I don't like them generally, and the reason that I'm a little nervous about them is they just don't tell you enough about what's going on. Like, where are you showing up? What are like the keywords that are converting? It's a
All
bit of a
right.
black box where my joke is that they looked over at Facebook ads and they were like, wow, you really have a nice little black box where people just put in a little bit of details, write some ad copy, and then you just take their money, and then you don't really tell them much about where they're showing up, like some demographic details, but not really they don't tell you the minute detail that you get out of the regular Google ads. So
All right.
generally, yeah, I'm generally adverse to them. I've heard of people doing them if you're in a very standard business, like a moving company or a plumber, where what you're expecting out of a campaign, like you kind of, the keywords are not going to be that different. The ad copy is probably going to be pretty similar no matter which location you're in. So
Nice.
like those kind of companies, I've heard that it can be good. I'm just always nervous about anytime Google's like, oh, it's a smart campaign, and it's like
Right.
my
Right.
gut
Right.
instinct is always just um,
Yeah, sometimes wizards have the tendency to do that. It just takes out all the complexity, and sometimes you want complexity. Sometimes that complexity gets you way better results. So
yeah.
what's your first tip, Galen?
Yeah, so my first tip is when you first create the account, don't just start clicking the big icons that they have at the top. Look for at the bottom, you'll see a little blue hypertext, and it's like, the smallest font they could possibly get away with, and it just says like switch to expert mode. And then
Yes.
so you'll have to stop, look at the bottom, and then look for switch to expert mode, and then they'll still want you to set up a campaign, but it'll be a regular campaign. And then in the bottom right hand corner, there's going to be a little spot saying set up an account without setting up a campaign. So
Right.
that way you can get in, and what's useful about that is you can start using the keyword planner. You could do a bunch of other stuff that maybe you don't want to jump into just doing a campaign right away. And so you might want to do some research, figure out if this is going to be the right situation for you. And so this is a way that you can access that without having to set up a campaign.
Great. Okay, so step number one, set up your account first using the expert tool at the
Yeah.
bottom. All right. And then do we want to set up our campaigns by using that expert tool too? Do we have to find that
Yeah.
expert tool again? Okay.
Well, once
Okay.
you've switched over to it, it
Oh,
completely
you're in
changes the look, and once you're there, and it's just always going to
it.
be. You don't have to stress about it once you've switched over to that mode. Um, and then I would say the next one that is when you start to create your campaign, turning off search partners and any of the display network if you're doing a search ad. And the reason is because this Google will say like, oh, well, you get so much more reach, and you will always get, yeah, you'll get a lot more reach, but you will not get. I've never seen it convert better. I've never seen it click through. So you're just wasting your budget being on an auction that you're not going to get a click for. And so it's like, well, why would you spend that money? Because most people, their budgets are getting tighter, and like you need to make that every ad dollar go as far as it can. And this is just a really good way to make sure that you've got as much capacity for things that actually get you clicks and conversions.
Okay, so I have a question about that. So, in
Yeah.
my experience on Facebook, when I open up the audience super broad, I get a way less click per conversion or click through rate
Mm-hmm.
than, sorry, a much lower click through rate. And so it looks like it's really good, but then most of that traffic falls off or is not interested, and it actually pushes up the cost per conversion rate, which is really what I want to look at when I'm looking at ads. So, is that the same case for Google ads?
Yeah, it's same
You're talking
concept.
about
Is
narrowing.
in this case, what you're doing is you're showing up on like DuckDuckGo, and you're showing up on like different platforms. And so what you're doing is like most people that are, or if you see like anytime there's like an ad on YouTube that's like a text ad, like because there's some that kind of show up in like the as a banner inside of it, and like most people aren't clicking on those. They just I've never. I mean, I'd be love to be proven wrong, but I've just never seen them do the kind of converting that you really
Yeah,
need.
yeah,
Um, and especially like you said, you might even get clicks, but like they're just not going to convert.
yeah.
Which actually does, I realized, just kind of lead me into the next part I wanted to say, which is the third point is going to be turning off apps if you do display, because display is really useful for really doing some top of funnel, like just getting
Right.
eyeballs on it. Um, but if you like, anytime you've seen like Candy Crush or a Tetris game, and you see a little ad at the bottom, people click
You're in
them
the
all.
middle. Do they click them all the time?
I've seen if you don't turn those off, you will see your placements because you can go
Yeah.
content inside of it, inside of your display ads, and then from content you can see where my ads being shown. And if you don't turn those off, you'll see just all of it is like translation apps and like Candy Crush and all that.
Uh,
Like it just will fill it all up.
is that right? Because yeah, I do the same thing in Facebook. I turn the in-apps function off too.
Yeah,
Mostly from my own behavior, because when I'm in the middle of playing a game, I don't want to ruin my game, right?
yeah,
Like to get that ad, you have to stop playing your game in the middle of
yeah,
being
yeah,
timed,
yeah,
usually being timed for something, and
yeah.
so
Exactly.
yeah. So that's good. I want to know if anyone in the audience actually hits ads when they're playing apps or when they're in an app. Do they hit an ad, or are they busy doing what they're doing in the app?
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
if you're,
Or if you did it
'cause I,
intentionally. I think that's
yeah,
the adjective that
oh,
like did you
right,
do
yes,
that intentionally? Because I'm gonna bet that a bunch of people accidentally do click on them all the time, but it's
that's true.
accidental.
That's
And yeah, and to Facebook and Google, like, that click, it clicked.
there's
Um
got to be a way to serve up ads in apps.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's just gotta it's also it's a great spot for them to just kind of get their ad budget to go out there.
Yeah.
We got accidentally from someone in the Facebook group, uh, and so it's
Yeah. Someone's done it accidentally. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is yeah, it's definitely one, and especially
Corner.
yeah, just by, well, and if you click it and you back out right away, like that's going to hurt your quality score as well, right? Because it's like, oh, they just bounced, and so it's
Yeah,
like it just hurts you all across the board. So it's just better to
yeah.
just not
Everybody
have.
everywhere is running to their ads and removing that placement on both Facebook and Google, right? That's what
Yeah,
everybody's doing right this minute.
yeah, that's what everyone definitely should be doing if they're not, because it's definitely one the I've just seen my budget just get burned out
Yeah,
immediately with like apps, and then like, oh, you spent all your money for your display. I was like, wasn't even running for an hour. How did you guys burn through all that?
wow.
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, it's just little subtle things that you wouldn't know unless you kind of had someone to talk through it with you. Is like, it makes sense when you hear it, but it's definitely one that Google's not going to tell you like,
Yeah.
hey, um, the other thing that could tie back to last week with the ads editor is once you've done it, because it is a bit of a labor intensive, like you have to check off like 180 different checkboxes. It's quite annoying. But once you've done it, then you could go to the ads editor and just copy and paste it. And yeah, and so it makes it super fast to just like, oh, well, you've done it once, and now you just go into the ads editor, go to negative app placements, and then just copy paste, and then you never have to do it again. It's the way that I do it with any new campaigns that I'm building.
Right. That sounds awesome. All right. What's your next tip?
Yeah, so going yeah, and also to save your budget, especially with display, is ad schedules. Ad schedules are your friend.
What is the schedule? I don't exactly know what that is.
So it's instead of, because you're basically like your daily budget will reset at midnight your time.
Uh-huh.
And so what they do is they go, okay, turn it on the display ads. And so it's going to be, again, if you don't have an ad schedule and you have it, and you also have app placements turned on. So just think of it as like it's midnight, someone's playing Candy Crush, they're falling asleep, and then they click on your ad, and you'll see like big sharp spike and then nothing. And most people, when they're seeing an ad at like midnight to anything before 8 a.m., they're probably not in the mindset of like, oh, I really need to know about this service or
Uh,
product.
I don't know. I'm a late night shopper myself. I'm a late
Okay,
night
okay.
online. But yeah, you definitely want to look at your numbers for sure, and
Yeah.
definitely if it's something that you're not getting a lot of. I've never thought of that. So, um, in my ads that I do, I leave it because I figure, well, if somebody's up late and they're looking at something and the ad converts, then that works fine for me. But I've never actually looked at it in detail to see like what the action is, how long that
Mm.
particular click stays online. Are we able to go into Google Analytics and figure that out? Figure out if they stayed? Like we can only see the averages of time spent on site, right? And we can't see when conversions happen, and we can't see which um, visits stay. Like, there's no timestamp for any of that analytics, right? Is there?
So for like hour of the day, that one's going to be a little more complex. Like, I
Yeah.
think that there is a way to do it, but you'd have to. I'll post in the group. I'll post a link to. There's a Google script that is really cool that sets up all these UTM parameters that are all variable. And so once you have those
Oh,
going, you
great.
and so you could actually start to break it down that way. But it does take
Got
like, there's no way out of the box. They're not
That's
very good at that part of it.
good. Actually, I never thought about it. Variable UTM. That's really good. Actually, I like that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
honestly, it definitely made my Google Analytics experience with Google Ads, like, it definitely brought it to life because it was showing you like, you can set the UTM parameters and it fills it in for the campaign, the search term, the ad group. And so you can really, and once those are in your Google Analytics, then you can really break down like, oh, this keyword was the one that did the converting, or this was the first step on a journey. And so you can kind of break all those parts down. And it's definitely very powerful once you break it down. But I don't know if even the ad schedule, they don't allow you to see conversions, which is kind of annoying. It's not my favorite part of it. They, for some reason, another thing about Google Ads is that they're like, "Hey, there's a table. Yes, this data is available, but you can't correlate these bits of
I see.
data. You'd have to like go to Data Studio, or I guess now Looker Studio is the name of it.
Oh,
Um,
they
and
changed
you'd have
it.
to like
Right,
cross
Google
compare.
changed it again.
Yeah, that's one we're going to talk about next week as well as a little preview. Is what's happened with Data Studio and how it's been
Nice.
molded with a new system called Looker, which was a
Okay.
business intelligence app that Google bought in 2020, and they finally, I guess, fully integrated it. And there's a bunch of stuff with that as well. Um, but yeah, I think you can correlate the like you could in Data Studio you could actually take like I want which hour of the day gets a conversion. And I think that data is available, but you have to like intentionally like I want to compare these two things,
Right.
and yeah, they're not very good out of the box to just be like, oh yeah, we're going to tell you, which it's kind of annoying when they do that and they're like, you have to put in a bunch of extra work when it's like you guys could have
Yeah.
easily just coded in like, put this by conversion, and then you could see it in the ad schedule. Um, it's yeah, it's definitely one that I definitely come back to the ad schedule thing, and like ours, because of most of our stuff is kind of service based, so we
Yeah.
generally don't think that most people are like, oh, it's midnight, I need to really think about my duct cleaning. Most people, it's not like the first thing that they're going to be
Right.
thinking of, and so that's why we kind of keep it, especially if we're doing display, that it's because it's much more top of funnel, that I want someone that's kind of alert when they're seeing
Yeah.
the ad and they're like, oh, I hadn't thought of cleaning my air quality based on my duct cleaning, so I should probably think about that. um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of our use case for it. The other one that is even cooler for it is you can do an ad schedule for extensions. So when you're setting up your call extension, so when their phone they
Oh,
can
I
call
see.
you, you can
Yeah.
set it to be like 9 to 5, because if no one's in the office, then what's
Well,
the
that
point?
makes way more sense. Yeah, that I see. That
Yeah,
I see. Okay.
yeah. And so that one is and that one even you could do like for your regular search ads, right? Because you're
Yeah.
not going to want to have the call extension even if they're typing in searching it, because like yeah, have them fill out a form if you're
Yeah.
not trying to get, if you're no one's in the office. But if they're calling you, you definitely want to have someone at the phone, because then
Yeah.
it's kind of a bit of a waste. Um, and so yeah, that's definitely uh, I found that to be a pretty useful one personally. And we've used it a couple times. It's been nice for call extensions to have like a time set that they're only going to show up for. Uh, the other one that we did, so I think Pip and I had a bit of a debate about this one. Well, they've changed it. They used to have this thing called auto apply ad suggestions, and it was
Oh,
yeah, and it was opt out by default, and now they've changed it to opt in.
okay.
So it is turned off by default, because a lot of people complained that they didn't even know that this was turned on. And it also seems a little unfair to just be like, oh, we're just going to tweak your ads every 2 weeks and you're not going to know about it.
Oh, I
Um,
see. Okay. Yeah, no,
yeah.
that doesn't work very well. How can you actually track what's working?
Yeah. Or give like consent to be like, yes, I want that language in my ads. Like,
Yeah.
you're not, or like, I want to bid on this keyword, stuff like that, where it's just, it opens up too many Pandora's boxes for Google to, and their AI to be bad. And so I think that they've turned it off by default. Um, so you can turn it on. I don't strongly do not recommend it.
Okay.
It's definitely one that I found to be the one of the more dangerous ones, that
No
Google's.
kidding, because that can really ruin your branding if it's got the wrong messaging or misleading if it
Yeah,
seems to mislead people. If it says that you offer one thing when it's closely related to what you do, but it's not exactly what you do.
yeah, exactly. Or you're bidding on keywords that are like not what your service you offer. I mean, it could be in a related field, but it's not like
Yeah.
that specific service, and you're bidding on it all of a sudden, and it's just like,
Right.
it's just a little too like, it makes me
Yeah.
nervous just thinking that that's like a
Yeah.
possibility that's out there. It's just like I don't like having that, losing that kind of control. Like I'm,
Yeah.
to an extent, I'm willing to let Google do some AI stuff, but for the
Tell
most
me what
part,
That tell me what that feature is called again.
So it's called auto apply ad recommendations, and you'll
Okay.
find it in the campaign settings. So each campaign is going to have its own settings. It'll be on the left hand menu, and then you just go into it, and then it'll be one of the. There's only a few in options available in the campaign settings.
Yeah.
So it's definitely one that is yeah, it's one that I would just make sure that it's turned off. It should always be, but like just to make sure you guys are aware of it because it's a weird one. Oh, one other one that when you're in the campaigns one, and you can set this up when you set up the campaign, but it is ad ad rotation. That's the name of it. And so what it is that because now Google has got you like write like 15 headlines and 3 descriptions, and it's making all these different combinations to see which one is doing the best. But what you want to do is have it indefinitely rotate them, not optimize for the best right away, because it will the way AI systems work is they overcorrect for one ad combination that's working.
Yeah.
And then they'll do is they'll find the path and they'll be like, okay, this is working, but they won't try different combinations. And so you want to run through all the different combinations, see which one's working and which one needs to get punched up for ad copy or whatever. And
Okay.
so yeah, I is it Facebook? They're much more limited. I remember like ads are generally a lot narrower for like the amount of headlines, the amount of descriptions, right?
Well, I can't really compare because I don't really know Google Ads at all, but we definitely have, there's definitely multiple places. What you could do is instead of actually putting it all into one ad, you can create multiple ads under the ad set, and that's how I usually test and organize different
Yeah,
ads, see what works best, and then I
yeah.
work my way to the best ad rather than mm, like and then I would have multiple ads for multiple ad sets. So the best ad for one ad set,
Yeah.
that kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's closer to how it used to be with Google with the thing called expanded text ads. That was much
Right.
similar where you would have multiple ads and you would
Yeah.
have a lot more control over the ads
Yeah.
themselves. Now they're just like, give us a bunch of headlines, give us a bunch of descriptions,
Yeah.
tell us what page you're going to. And
Yeah.
so it's,
I definitely had on the last one campaign that I set up the other day, there were definitely 3 headlines that I could put in, and I used all of them. I filled them all in to see what would work, and it doesn't really
yeah,
tell you what works, so it doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? Like, I actually think it makes way more sense um, to create separate ads for separate headlines to see which headline actually converts,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, no, I would absolutely love if they had left
Yeah,
expanded text ads.
yeah.
But
I don't
unfortunately,
see the purpose of these. When I went
Google,
into, yeah, this is the first time I've tried the multiple headlines,
yeah,
and when I went back to look, it's like, oh, well, I can't tell anyway, so I'll just
yeah.
leave it, I guess. But on the next campaign, for sure, I'll be doing separate ads to see what's working and what doesn't.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. They do tell you inside of they're called responsive search ads. Um, they
Uh,
tell you like, oh, this combination performed the best. They don't
oh,
tell you,
that's good.
yeah. So they do tell, but they don't give
Yeah,
you any numbers. They just said this one's the best. This one did the
oh,
worst.
oh, so you don't know by how much?
Yeah, they're and you're taking their word for it that they're just like,
Yeah, that's not particular. And best in what way?
yeah,
Did it get
and
more clear? Did it get longer time on the site, or how is it working better?
yeah. Well, and how many times did that one show up? Like, is it that you showed this other one 100 times and you showed this one that did the best 10 times and you got 5 clicks? Uh,
Yeah.
like, is it like they don't give you any data to actually like compile
Yeah.
what is
That
best?
sucks. The less data, yeah, when they pull the data away from you, it's always annoying. It's always annoying.
Well, and leaving nice, clearly defined words like best or worst or
Well,
good, and
even on quality control, like we get a quality score on Facebook, and sometimes as a strategy, I'll use an engagement campaign when I'm really sending people to the website, and it'll say that I've got a poor quality, but it's the best. I think we talked about this last week. It's the actually the best performing ad that we've got running. But if you don't know any better and you just leave yourself open to however Google or Facebook tells you you're doing, then you don't really know.
Yeah,
You don't
exactly.
know what criteria they're judging the ad on.
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely, yeah, when they're just sort of like, oh, take our word for it. This one did really, really well, and they give you the
Yeah.
overall numbers of just like, yeah, this is how many impressions, but it's like not individual combinations.
Yeah,
That,
I remember
that
arguing with a client on that. They said, "Oh, your ads are doing terrible," and it's like, "Are you kidding me? Your sales are way up. I can see it."
yeah,
And so it's like, would you prefer to listen to what Facebook says, or would you prefer to listen to what Google Analytics tells us? Because I'm in camp Google Analytics.
yeah. There's definitely well, and also like just at the end of the day, like which one is literally putting money in your bank account? Are you like
Exactly. I'm
independent
not.
of the ads platform?
Yeah, I'm not here to have Facebook tell me I'm doing great all the time. Like
Yeah.
that's not useful.
Hmm.
Right on. So how we've got about 5 more minutes. How many more tips do we have?
Well, the last one that I wanted to that I just remembered I forgot to leave a note about was locations, which is
Okay.
there's a cool feature because I remember we were talking about locations and they've done a lot of tweaking with the locations that you can't do the micro targeting like we had talked about. Um, yeah, and so there is a little um, toggle that when you're setting and you're picking your locations
Yeah.
that is something to keep in mind as well because it can kind of cause some issues for you and it is not you pick not only residents but interest in that location.
Okay.
So you're picking like say you're advertising for Tofino, which is like a summertime getaway. You are also going to want to get people that are interested in Tofino that maybe they're in Vancouver and they want to do a weekend getaway
Wow.
versus people that are specifically in that like that
Right.
region that you're picking. Um, so what happened with us, just as a funny side story, was we were trying to set up a campaign for someone in Victoria, which is, if you're not familiar, Victoria is south of the 49th parallel. So a lot of, if you do like a radius, it all hit the United States. And so what
Right.
we had to do was we had to pick people that were living in the area, um, that lived in the area because we had a policy violation that we weren't allowed to do any targeted advertising to people in Washington about this service. And so you had to like pick it so it was like specifically there in that area and people living there, not people interested in that area, because it would set off that little distinction between like where they were and where they would like to go. It set it off that we had a policy violation. We were tearing our hair out trying to make it work, and it was definitely annoying.
Right. Yes, that would be annoying. Yes, and I actually never thought of that about Victoria. That's true.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely one where you're like you want to do a nice broad area and then you're immediately because also negativing out locations in Google Ads does weird things as well because again like maybe they're a person that is living in Victoria and they go over for the day, they go to Washington State. Well, I still want to advertise to them, so like yes they're in that location, they're not in the location I want but they're technically still interested but they're not there, so it does all kinds of weird things where they have to like because it's
Right.
negative out they can't show the run the ad there.
Right. Right. Can you do really narrow radiuses and then pick lots of like suburb names and
Yeah.
close
Yeah. So
communities?
the location targeting is actually pretty cool for Google Ads. I got to give it to them that you can pick like postal codes, but it's like, yeah. So it's not, but it's so for anyone who's not in Canada, the first three letters in the postal code are an overall area and then it subdivides onto like roads. And so the first three are actually for us. The first three is like all of Cowichan Valley. So it
Uh-huh.
covers a huge amount of people. So rather than just picking like the city of Duncan, I can actually pick like a whole area based on the first three characters in a postal code. So they'll let you do that kind of targeting.
Okay, interesting. So it seems like Facebook and Google have really borrowed from each other a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, Facebook
Crossover.
ads literally hired, I think the top senior engineer for Google Ads, like the guy
Oh, is
who,
that what happened?
yeah. So it's that bad and that incestuous that they just bought they hired those guys, and I think TikTok hired all the Facebook ads senior
Oh, you're
team.
kidding me.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
hilarious.
Yeah, so they've all been cribbing from each other's notes pretty hard.
Right. Yes, that is indeed the case. All right,
Yeah,
I'm just looking at what we've got happening next week.
it's
Did you have
the
any last?
no. I was just gonna say I do know what's next week because it's the end of the month, and so we're doing what in the
Oh,
world of
yes.
marketing.
Right on. All right. So if you're finding us somewhere, you might want to know that we are actually in the cyberpunk geek marketing mixer Facebook group. That's where
Yeah.
we live and where we stream from, and we restream in lots of other places. So please join us there if you like, and join us next week at the same time, 11 to 11:30, when we will be giving you the roundup of what's been going on in the last month of in marketing. Right
Yes.
on.
All right. That's it.
Good week.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye bye.